Hello everybody, welcome to Coyotiv School of Software Engineering. This is Armağan from Coyotiv, and today we're together again for our third installment in our public lecture series. Today we're going to be talking about Node.js. Today we're going to do an introduction on Node.js, but before we get to that, thank you so much for all the great chat that's happening over in the chat. Apparently we have people from the dark side of the moon, which is great. Hi. I'm one of those people who believe that there's a base, an alien moon base on the dark side of the moon. Yeah, and we have a lot of people from Berlin and Frankfurt. Hello, everybody. I know a couple of them. Some of them are our students from our previous cohorts, our current cohorts, and some of them are just friends. Thank you for tuning in to this wonderful hour with Armağan. I know you deserve better. I know you can get better, but this is the best we have so far. So you'll have to do with me. Today we're going to talk about Node.js again. We're going to talk about what Node.js is, how you use it. It's going to be a very hands-on practical class about Node.js, and I still have, as always, I have a lot of ground to cover today. Hello, hi, and yeah, just tell me how you all are doing under the current conditions, under the pandemic. I am also looking forward to a vaccine. I hope we're gonna get a vaccine soon. Not because I love being at home. I like working from home and everything, but you know, that when you need that extra kick, that extra bit of motivation that you want to go out with friends and have a drink or two, I think I'm missing that. It's been quite some time, and yeah, I think we would really benefit from such an arrangement, all of us. So let's keep our hopes up for a vaccine, and finally, hopefully, we're going to be able to go out and meet in public. Can you imagine? We couldn't even meet the students from the first cohort. We did an entire cohort and they became software engineers, and we celebrated that over Zoom. While it was a great celebration, and I kind of had to do a mini concert on the celebration, it's still, I don't know. I think I like being in the moment with people, and there's always that latency in Zoom. I think that's the culprit. That's killing everything. That's killing the vibe. All right. How shall we start? I have so much to cover. I think I'm gonna start by sharing my screen and delving right into code. But before I do that, let's kind of talk about Node.js. I always have this question from people like, what is Node.js? And is it JavaScript? Is it an application? Is the browser? Is the train? Is the bird? It's something like a Superman. But Node.js defines itself as a JavaScript runtime built on Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine. And I know this is cryptic, but believe me, this is a lot easier to digest than their previous tagline, and that was, I think, asynchronous non-blocking IO and something like that. Asynchronous non-blocking IO, that also was a lot of buzzwords that apparently nobody understood, so they chose JavaScript runtime built on Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine. But there's so many concepts there. What is a runtime? What is an engine? Simply put, Node.js, and please don't roast me for this, I know I'm going on record saying this, Node.js is an app that runs JavaScript. It's as simple as that. You feed it a file of JavaScript, and it runs that JavaScript for you. That's all. It is an app on Windows, on Mac, on Linux. It is an app. It's an executable that you can call, and you pass in a file to it, and it runs that file. That's all it does. Node.js is an app that runs JavaScript. Now, how does it do that? Apparently, the JavaScript engine in Google Chrome It's called V8, and an engine in this case means a piece of code that interprets, that understands, and executes, runs your code. That's what an engine is. Apparently, Chrome's V8 engine can be kind of like scooped out of Google Chrome. It doesn't have to run inside Chrome. You can take it out. It's open source. You can take it out and put it in another binary, another application, another executable, whatever you want to call it, and it's going to function. Of course, you need to do a lot of plumbing around to make that work. And fortunately, brilliant people did that for us. And today, what we can do is we can use JavaScript without Chrome itself. We can run JavaScript, interpret, understand, run, execute JavaScript without Google Chrome. And we do that via Node.js. So Node.js is an application that takes V8, Google Chrome's JavaScript engine, and builds a couple of tools and libraries around it so that programming is a little bit easier. And that's it. That's what Node.js is. So it is an application that features Google's V8 engine at its core and adds a couple of libraries on top to make your life easier. And I think today we're going to talk a little bit about some of those topics and how Node.js works under the hood as well. And we're going to talk about that asynchronous non-blocking IO thing. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but let's set it as a stretch goal. And one thing that I want to tell at this point is, I know it might sound scary. It's not scary at all. It is just like running JavaScript in your browser. It's exactly like running JavaScript in your browser. It's very simple to use, very simple to understand. The documentation is much better than some of the other languages that I have seen, and I might be looking at PHP. I love the documentation. You have a lot of online resources, free resources, and best of all, that's what we're going to talk about the most today. You have a vast array of third-party libraries at your disposal. You have millions of libraries, Node.js libraries, JavaScript libraries at your disposal, and you can just use someone else's code in your project. Some people kind of like look at it and classify it as free labor, that other people on the internet are doing free labor for you. They're writing code that you should have written. I like to see it as collaboration and sharing. And there is this famous quote, I think it's from Newton, correct me if I'm wrong, standing on the shoulders of giants. That's what science is. And that's what JavaScript development became. So we are standing on the shoulders of giants. And actually, coming up, we're going to have another lecture on Node.js and another one on Express.js and REST API development. And there you'll truly see how far we can push this and, how much trouble these great people save us from. So that's really not the case, Mart. All right, so we're going to start with a screen share, and I'm going to talk about what makes a great Node.js project. What actually makes a Node.js project? Let me arrange my environment a little bit, because it's always a challenge when you have multiple items on the screen, and trying to fit a code editor is always a challenge. Doomed lives of a streamer. So let me see. Yep. Okay. Hi, Steve. I love you too. I love you too. All right. Now, screen sharing. Where was I? I think it's like this. Perfect. Yes. I hope you see my screen right now. So what we like to do at Coyotiv is to have a story, a continuation of our lectures. We believe that you learn the best when you are able to carry over your knowledge from one session to the other, from one lecture to the other. So in that fashion, I'm going to build on top of what we did in the previous lecture. And if you didn't watch it yet, it was about object-oriented programming with JavaScript. So I encourage you to check out our channel. We have free public lectures. And on the second lecture, we talked about object-oriented programming and, you know, a little bit advanced, more advanced topics like private variables and ownership and so on. And I'm going to build on top of that. I'm going to take that example and I'm going to turn it into a Node.js project. Now, of course, last week and the week before in the first lecture as well, we were running our applications with Node.js. So I assume that by this point you have Node.js installed, or you can install it with a package manager. How we run our code is just by typing in node index.js, and it evaluates our code, and you know, we cannot withdraw 100 euros, but we cannot withdraw minus 100, but we can withdraw 100 euros, and then you would see the results. So the command to run any Node.js application is by doing node and then passing in a file. In this case, we're passing in the index.js. That's why it's executing this line by line. It's declaring the class and then creating a new account and so on and so forth. Great. But is this a Node.js project yet? Just because you have a bunch of JavaScript files doesn't really mean that it's a Node.js project. And there is a special file that is required in every Node.js project to identify that folder as a Node.js project. And that file is called package.json. And that basically identifies your package as a Node.js package, as a node package. You can go ahead and create it on your own. You could say package.json, and you can put whatever you want in it. And your IDE, Visual Studio Code, will probably help you, but you know, with what you need to type in it. But it's kind of, I'm not sure how I feel about this. It's not very easy or intuitive to write something like this from scratch. So I'm going to delete this file, and I'm going to create an npm, a node project with the tool that we have, that we love the most, and it's npm. What is npm? npm stands for Node Package Manager, and what it does is it gives you a basically infinite world of possibilities. It is a package manager in the sense that there are millions of packages, ready-made packages that you can take and use. And we're going to see one today that's going to be really helpful. So npm is also another application. It helps you install these packages, manage these packages as dependencies, because your code will probably depend on these packages. But it also allows you to create your own package. Hence the name Node Package Manager. And basically it tells you this utility will walk you through creating a package.json file. Great. It only covers the most common items and tries to guess sensible defaults. Thank you. Helpful. Definitely see npm help in it. And then you can use npm install package name. Those chevrons are a placeholder for a package name. You can do npm install package name afterwards to install a package and save it as a dependency in the package.json file. Let's see how it all works. Now, it by default takes the name of the folder. it wants to call this project 3 intro to Node. I'm fine with that. It asks for a version. Usually it's best to start at 0.0.0. I'm not going to go into the details of versioning in this lecture, but 1.0.0 is for stable projects, and we're just starting out. We don't even have a project yet. So probably it's not a great idea to call it a stable release. So I'm going to go ahead and use 0.0, let's say 1, okay? Let's cut ourselves some slack here. And description, a banking application in Node.js is my description. Entry point index.js, this is the file that is the entry point to your application, the file that should run first. Test command, unfortunately we don't have testing right now. We're gonna do another lecture on testing later, so this will come later. I'm hitting enter to move over. All right, it asks for a Git repository. I currently don't have a Git repository for this, so I'm gonna skip it. But what usually should happen is you first create a Git repository on GitHub or GitLab, provider of your choice. You clone that folder and then you run npm init on it. I'm gonna skip Git for now. Keywords, banking, should be enough. License, again, this is an open source license. Type, I like to use MIT. I was using Apache version 2 before. I then switched over to MIT for various reasons. I don't know what ISC is actually. It's the default for Node projects, but I didn't take the time to look it up. In fact, so I'm gonna go with MIT. Please make sure you read the different kinds of open source licenses. If you don't want to open source your code, that's also fine. You can also have a special license. And it asks me if this package.json is okay. And at this point, I don't know. Yeah, probably. How should I know? And the default is yes. So I'm gonna hit enter, and here I am. Great. Now I could definitely write this by hand, but you know, it's a challenge. All right, now that we have a package.json, the first thing that I want to do is to change how I run my application. Now, I told you that all applications, all Node.js applications work like writing node index.js, right? And you get the output of your file. That's great, but what if your entry point, your file is not index.js? And what if you want to run a different command? And we almost always want to run a different command. You don't want to burden your developers remembering what the exact command was to run your application. So what you do is you come up with a start script such that no matter what the project is, no matter what you're looking at, you run that script and it magically runs whatever project you're in. And the developers of those projects are, free to define how they design that starting script. I'm gonna show you what I mean by starting script. So we have the test script here. I'm going to add another one called start. And there I'm gonna type in node index.js, all right? And I'm gonna save package.json. Now, what this essentially does is it allows me to do npm start. And if I type npm start, it executes the start script of that project. And in this case, it was node index.js. It could be anything. And basically, this is a huge relief because you don't need to remember how to individually run each project. If you see any Node project, I'm sure they have an npm start command. And you just type npm start and that project starts. So even if there are, a plethora of commands that you need to run, that you need to type to make that application run, you can hide those behind a start script. So this lets me type npm start again. Notice that it's npm start and not node index.js. I type npm start and it starts this beautiful project that I have. Great. Now, next thing. This is a plain JavaScript file. This would run in the browser. This would run in your terminal. It's great, but it is a little bit limited. So if you didn't watch the previous course, we have a bank account that has a balance, it has an overdraft, and keeps track of the transactions. So what you can do here is you can create a new account and you can withdraw a certain amount from the account, and you can deposit a certain amount, like 300, and you run your code again and you see account balance is 200 because we first deposited 300 euros or whatever money currency that is, and then we withdrew 100 of it. So we are left with 200 and we have the transaction history. It's not exactly transaction history, it's your balance history, kind of account balance history, and not the transactions, individual transactions, but fine, for now it will do. Now the question is, we're thinking in object-oriented terms, right? Who creates a bank account and who can deposit and withdraw money from a bank account? This is a little bit interesting if you come to think of it. A bank account, last time I checked, cannot exist solely on its own. Something or somebody has to create a bank account, right? You cannot just go on and magically say, oh, const account equals new bank account, and then you have a new bank account. That kind of doesn't work. For a bank account to exist, there has to be a bank, right? So let me create a bank first. I'm going to add a new class bank. And this bank class should be able to open accounts for us. And what should it do? In an open account method, I think it should return a new bank account. All right. And in your code, you should be first creating the bank. Const bank equals new bank. And then instead of doing a new bank account, you should probably do bank.openAccount. And that gives you your new bank account. Now this seems more likely as a scenario in object-oriented programming as well. I guess like you have a bank and then bank opens an account for you, which sounds reasonable. I think it's a good idea. But okay. Now, obviously I also want this bank to keep a tab on the existing accounts, right? There should be a way for the bank to keep track of the accounts that it creates. Let's first see if this is working. It is still working. Great. I would say a bank should keep an internal array of bank accounts. Call it accounts. Yeah, it makes total sense, right? A bank has a list of all the accounts it has. And just like transactions, it's nothing fancy. So what we do here is, when we're setting the balance, we would push the amount to the transactions. What we're going to do here is whenever we're opening a new account, we're going to first, or let's say account, we're going to first create that account. Okay. And then we're going to push it to our accounts list. And then we're going to return the newly created account. All right. I think it looks good. And now a bank can keep a track of all the accounts it opens. We can say, okay, open a new account and open another account and so on and so forth. This is great. Who deposits and withdraws money from an account? Why do you create an account? I get it, a bank creates an account, but for whom? The bell tolls. I like this a lot. I really, really like this. To turns out that we open a bank account for a person. Unless we have a customer, we wouldn't really have a bank account. So what we're going to do here is we are going to also create another class called user. Okay. Now a user should opt for opening an account. Let's say a user has one account. All right. A user has a private property called account. Currently, let's say it's null. And a user can open an account with a bank. All right. Sounds good. And the user should be able to withdraw an amount from a bank account. So withdraw amount. And a user should be able to deposit money to their bank account. All right, great. I think this looks good right now. A user has 3 methods. So how would we use this? We have a bank. Of course, we need to have a user as well. New user. All right, a bank. A bank does open an account, but is it really the way it works? I think a user first opens an account and they go to the bank and say, hey, could you open an account for me? And what would happen here is probably I would say user.open account, user opens an account, and then user deposits money and user withdraws money. All right. And it's not the account doing the withdrawal and deposit on its own. I think this feels a little bit better. We have a bank and we have a user, and a user opens an account. Now, here I told you that I should have a bank because a user cannot open an account on its own. That wouldn't work. A user could only open an account with a bank. So you would probably pass in bank here as a parameter, as an argument, and you would do here bank dot open account, and that would give us a new account, right? Looks cool. And of course, as a user, what I want to do is I want to save it as my personal account. Amazing. This account, bank, open account. Great. Now as a user, I saved that account, and if I want to deposit money, any amount, what I simply do is I do this account deposit, and I would pass in the amount. And if I want to withdraw any sum of money, I would do this dot account dot withdraw amount. All right. Now let's see if this is going to work. I'm very excited. I don't know if it's going to work. Probably won't, but maybe it does. Of course it didn't. Account is not defined. Amazing. On line 71. But of course, we don't have account balance anymore. Let's see. We want to have an access to this user's account. So just for now, let's give access to the user's account. I run it again. And then here I do, instead of account, I do user.account. And here as well, user.account transactions. Let's see. All right, it ran. Perfect. Great. Now, for now, this is enough for my purposes. Here is an issue though. This file is about 70 lines long. It's not too long, but it already does too much. What happens here is I have a bank account class, a bank class, and a user class. This doesn't make a ton of sense. It doesn't. All of them are on a single file, and then I have my logic on this file as well. It's kind of confusing. So Node.js has this wonderful ability to split your code into modules, which is not something you could do with front-end JavaScript, at least with ES6. And then there are other methods that came with import syntax. But by default, a browser does not understand splitting modules. You have to load them one by one as script tags. But in Node.js, you can say, okay, I'm going to have a file dedicated to a bank account. I'm going to have another file dedicated to bank and another file dedicated to user. Okay. And let me move these classes to their dedicated files. I'm moving the bank account over on its own file. I'm moving the bank over to its own file. And I'm also going to move the user over to its own file. Great, but how do I use them here in my index.js? I need a reference to bank user. Apparently I don't need a reference to bank account, but a bank does. So what I do is to leverage a functionality of Node.js that is requiring different modules. So in order to use a bank here, I need to define it, right? Bank equals, I say require, and I use the bank file. This is where the bank class resides. So require it for me, bring it forth, and I'm going to use it. I do the same for user. Require user. And here you see now when I click on user, you see here that it's kind of, the background is highlighting. So you see there the same variable, bank is here. Amazing. And if I run this, it won't work yet. Because even though I have indicated how I require these files, I haven't indicated how I provide these files, these classes. So I want to see the bank class here from the bank module, bank file. But in this file, I don't have a way to export this class. So there's nothing in this file that says, okay, this class should be up for grabs whenever somebody requires this file. What we do here for to make that happen is to type module that exports bank. I'm not going to go into the detail of what module exports is, but it gives you an opportunity to export this class out to other modules that would require this bank.js. All right, yeah. How we do user.js is exactly the same. We do module.exports and do user, and that will work. And we would expect this to work, right? That could work. However, a bank still needs to access bank account. So I also need to import that module. So I do const bank account equals require bank account. All right, here, let's do npm start again, and let's see how it doesn't work because I haven't exported the bank account class yet. I do the same here, module exports bank account. And now I'm running it. It's here. I do run npm start, and we see that the account balance is 200, transaction history, we have 300 and 200 there as well. Great. Now the app works. What I did in my index.js file is to require the files, require the classes of bank and user, and simply to use them. Index.js is an entry file to your application. Therefore, it shouldn't define the building blocks of your application. And by building blocks, I mean the classes that I'm using in my app that are bank account, and user. So what I do here is I have these classes, great, and then I'm using them here, which is, it looks very simple. Index.js require bank and user, new bank, new user, user opens account with a bank, user deposits money, user withdraws money. Looks perfect. Here with a bank account, this file only lists the bank account class. This file only lists the bank class. And here we have the user class, which is, again, really, really useful in kind of managing the complexity, because these files will get, will get really big. They're going to get like 1,000 lines, 2,000 lines. And it's great if we can break them up into different chunks of responsibility. We always split our files by responsibility, and we try to make sure that each individual file has only one single responsibility. I'm not going to talk about what single responsibility principle is, because it's a dedicated principle on its own, but maybe in the future we're going to have another class for it. But yeah, all right, so this is great, and this is how I run my code. Now let's look at other properties of this wonderful ecosystem. The first one is npm. I told you npm is a package manager, and it has millions of packages. Where do they live? Let's go to our browser, and let's go to npmjs.org. This is where these packages live. Basically, npm is what made JavaScript thrive so much in open source, because you can have, it's very easy to both install and publish packages. And you can type anything. I don't know. Let's look for unit conversion, and you would see many libraries, like 145 packages just for unit conversion. JavaScript library for quantity calculation and unit conversion. Sure. Let me zoom in a little bit. And then, yeah, JS quantities is originally a JavaScript port of Kevin Olbricht's library, Ruby units. Fine. This is how you install it. You can do npm install JS quantities and work with it. What it does is it converts centimeters to meters to feet and so on and so forth. Attoparsec over microfortnight. I don't know what that is, honestly. I have no idea what attoparsec is, let alone microfortnight. Isn't Fortnite a game? I'm not sure this is how you write it though. Anyway, these libraries have really nice documentation. You can see that people took their time to write all of the examples here. You can convert Fahrenheit to Celsius, and this is a great way to learn and to grow. Basically, you just by reading these libraries, you understand how people write code and how you could write your own and how you could use their libraries. This is an immense resource, and there are about 1.5 million different libraries here. I have a question from the chat. Is there a difference between module export and export? Exports is that exports in module.exports. So module is the object, exports is another object, a child of module. So if you want to export a named function, you would do exports that function name. If you want to export a class as a default export, you would do module.exports. I'm not going to go into the details, but that's the difference. It's basically the same object, but if you replace it, you replace the entire contents of that module. If you do module.exports equals a class. And of course, I cannot hold myself, and I'm going to show it to you. You could, instead of this, you could do exports.user equals user, right? You could also do this, but then you would have to do require user.user here. Or you would use a destructuring syntax and do it like this for this to work. This is not a good practice for our purpose because our file is only exporting one single class, so it's fine to use the default export. And npm versus yarn. Yeah, I think I'm an old school person. Yarn doesn't really offer any extra features over npm. They did when they first came out, but npm quickly closed the gap. So as Steve says, both are fine. It's just fine. All right, let's go back. This is how you would use a library. And now the first library that I'm going to introduce is a library called Nodemon. Okay. Now, the issue that I have right this second is every time I want to run my application, I have to type npm start, and then it runs and it stops. And I change something and I have to type npm start again. Like if I want to withdraw another $50, I still have to run npm start again. This doesn't work for me. I would very much like this to refresh automatically, run automatically whenever I save this file. And that is supported by a package called Nodemon. It monitors your source files and it automatically restarts when there is any file change in the directory. And this is actually pretty useful, and they give you tips on how you can install it and how you can use it. I'm not gonna go into too much details here, but what I'm gonna do is I'm going to install it as a development dependency. I don't need Nodemon when I deploy my code to my server, but I just want to have it as part of my development environment when I'm developing code. So I'm going to install npm I -d, these are shorthands. I'm going to install Nodemon as a development dependency, and let's have a look at package.json. This is currently what it is, and right now I have a development dependency called Nodemon. Amazing. Now I could change my start script to start this with Nodemon, but I'm gonna do something else because I still want this to be the default way to start my application, Node index.js. It shouldn't watch for file changes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce another script called dev. And there I'm going to type Nodemon. All right. And now here, when you do npm run dev, it starts your application with Nodemon and starts watching the file, watching for changes before restart. So what you do here is if you add another line here, and save the file, it's automatically going to restart, which is really helpful when you're developing code, when you're quickly testing out something. Like if you do this, oh my God, there's an error. I need to fix it. Amount must be a positive number. All right, I'm going to fix it. I do this. I save the file and it's automatically refreshed, which is great. We really love this functionality. So this is a little tip. But what we did here is we really stood up on the shoulders of giants. Here we have Nodemon, a huge package. It would be impossible for me to write this functionality on my own. Not that I haven't, but it's great to be able to just install this and use. This is amazing, right? It's amazing. All right, the next thing that I'm going to show is the use of another package, of course, because why should we stop? If we're able to easily use packages like these, we should be able to make use of them. So what I want here is a way to create multiple users and multiple accounts and a way to differentiate them. All right. Let me create a new user. Const another user equals new user. And another user also opens a bank account. Open account with bank. And the first user does these operations. Another user deposits, I don't know, 3 million. I think this should work now. No, I think it should. Another user deposits 3 million and then withdraws, I don't know, 3. Of course, when I save the file, I don't see the account balance and transaction history here for another user. But if I change these users here to another user and save, you're going to see 3 million here and 2,999,997. Okay, maybe this isn't a great idea. Let's deposit 3 euros instead, so it's easier to say 3,000,003. Amazing. All right. Right. Now, I want to build functionality into my bank class to give me the list of balances. So there should be a property called balance sheet. All right. I'm just making this up right this second. And what I want to do here is I want to be able to console log bank.balance sheet. All right. And we should be seeing, and I don't want these anymore, we should be seeing the balances of these accounts. Okay. So here, what this should do is to return the balances of each account. This account map account dot balance. Okay, and now you see, okay, I have 80 and then 3,000,003. But now the question is, what are these accounts? What are these numbers? To whom do these numbers belong? How do I know the owners of these accounts? This doesn't look very nice. So for that, I think I'm going to do something else. I think I'm going to format these into kind of a readable format. So instead of returning an account balance, why don't I return an object that has balance on it? Okay. And then I should be able to add the user. How do I get the user, the owner of a bank account though? See, that is really an interesting question. I don't have any way of knowing that. A bank account doesn't know the owner. That is kind of sad. I think it would be great if a bank account knew its owner, if it could display the name of the owner and so on. For this purpose, I'm going to go to the user class. When a user opens an account, it should tell the bank, hey bank, please open an account for me. Please open an account for me with my details, with my personal details. Okay. And therefore it would pass in a variable this. Please open an account for me. Okay. What should the bank do in this case? Currently, it doesn't accept any parameters. It should accept a user parameter. A bank should open an account for a specific user. And what I'm going to do here is I pass on that information to the bank account itself so that I can save it. inside the user property. Currently, by default, a bank account doesn't have any users, and we have a constructor here. What we do here is it accepts a user parameter, and then it saves that user as the user coming in from the bank. This sounds great, and of course, then what we want here is an ability to fetch that user. So we would do return this dot user here. If anybody wants to get the user of this bank account, we're going to return the user. All right. Let's see the balance sheet again. We should return the account, the user of the account as well. All right, so this is a user and their balance is 80. This is another user and their balance is 3,000,003. Who are these people? Interesting. Let's kind of give some names to these users, right? How do we define them? Who they are. So let's just give them names. A user, when you instantiate a user, you should pass in a name. Constructor name, and you would have name as a private property here. It's an empty value, and what you do when you create a user is you save the name of that user on the instance, and then of course there is a way to get that name, to read that name. Return this dot name. Perfect. All right, so what we do here is this user, let's call him Armağan, and let's call this user Steve Ingram. All right, so this user is saving the name here, Armağan, and then Steve, and then you can get the name of this user. Perfect. Let's go back to bank account and let's try to fetch the names. Perfect. Now you see user Armağan, balance 80. Steve is definitely much richer than I am, and he has 3 million euros in his bank account. Amazing. Perfect. Now this is how we see the balance sheet of our bank. It looks great. But I still don't have a way to differentiate between these accounts. Wouldn't it be great if these accounts had numbers so that you could transfer money to a specific account? I think it would be great, right? So the way that works is each bank account has a unique identifier, a unique number. There are multiple ways of coming up with unique numbers. And each bank would have its own scheme for generating random numbers or a bank account number. I don't want to deal with that. I'm going to go with an industry standard unique number generator. I'm going back to npm and unique ID. I'm just going to type unique ID and see what comes up. A tiny, secure, URL-friendly, unique string ID generator. Amazingly short, non-sequential, URL-friendly, unique ID. Hyper ID. There are, how many, like 500 packages for unique IDs. Amazing. Amazing. Here I'm going to use one that I love the most. It's called UUID. Even though it doesn't give you an ID that is exactly like a bank account number, I just love using UUIDs. It's, you know, it's downloaded 40 million times just this week or last week. 40 million times. It's a huge library. It's not a huge library, but its use is so big. So it also tells us how to work with it. So I do npm install uuid. This time, let's have a look at our package JSON. This time it shows up in my dependencies uuid, because this is required. This will be required for my code to run. Okay. And there is a way to use it, just this const v4 uuid v4 and then uuid v4. All right, there could be a simpler version for using this. So let's do that. I think I will need it in bank account. So const uuid equals require uuid point v4. Okay. And what I do is whenever I create a new bank account, I generate a new identifier. And then also, of course, I do get ID, return this dot private ID. So you're able to return the ID of a bank account. Great. User balance. Let's add the ID here, account, and let's see what it returns right now. And let's see if it's going to work. I have no idea if it's going to work. I'm trying this for the first time. I do npm run dev again, and nice. Now you see we have completely different IDs. The only thing that will never change is the first character of the third section is always 4. I don't know why. I knew, but I forgot. It's always 4. So 1 to third section, how many, regardless of however many IDs you generate, the third section will always start with 4. All right, now I have unique IDs for my bank accounts. Seems pretty good, right? And we gave our bank a chance to print its balance sheet. I'm not sure if it's called a balance sheet. I'm pretty sure it's not called a balance sheet, but let's not focus on the grammar right now and correctness of the usage of terms. But I think this looks good. Okay, yeah, I think this is fine. What we did here as a recap, we installed, we made use of Node.js, and we converted our single JavaScript file into a Node.js package, Node.js project with package.json. We generated a package.json file. We added a start script. We added a development script with Nodemon so that whenever I save the file, it automatically, like if I do this, it automatically refreshes and shows me the results of my script. And we broke down our index.js into multiple files, all of which host one single class. And we also made use of multiple classes. We created a user, we created bank accounts. A user can open an account with a bank. It is so natural. It is so natural. It reads really like a poem. A user deposits money, another user deposits money. Perfect. And then we used another package called Uuid to generate universally unique identifiers. We're using something called v4. The details don't really matter. And every time we create a new bank account, we generate a new ID for it and assign it to the bank account so that we can fetch it afterwards. Great. What are we going to do next week? Next week, we're going to look at some of the internal libraries of Node.js. We're going to do some file operations, and we're going to look into what asynchrony really means. What is asynchronous? What is non-blocking I/O? We're going to look into these concepts. Today was just a primer into Node.js, a very brief introduction into Node.js and working with files and modules in Node.js. I hope you liked it. I hope this class was useful. Before I let you go, I'm going to do some changes on this folder. I'm going to arrange my files so that they are all under a source folder. My sources are under the source folder, and you see my IDE is set up in a way that it automatically updates the links to those files. So at the root you have the index.js. Amazing. That's the entry point into my application. And under source I have bank account, bank, and user. This gives me a little bit of that, headroom to play with files around, so that I don't have like thousands of files in a single folder, but I can kind of group them. All right. That's it. That's a wrap for today. I hope you enjoyed the class. If you liked it, I always say this, I don't do this for my own personal channel, but I do this for Coyotiv. If you like the content here today, think of subscribing to the channel. In fact, go ahead and directly hit subscribe and then hit that bell so that you're notified of our future streams, because next week we're going to go on with Node.js fundamentals, and then we're going to go into Express.js and building REST API with Express. And, who knows what the future will bring. We're going to probably have further lectures on different topics. All right. It was really lovely to have you tonight. This is Armağan from Coyotiv School of Software Engineering. And we train people on the fundamentals of software engineering. We train people on what it means to become a software engineer. We give them the tools to understand and to have a taste of code, to be able to evaluate good code versus bad code. And we don't teach only how to write code, but we give them the fundamentals, the philosophy, the thinking behind software engineering. So that's what sets Coyotiv apart from its so-called competitors. So if you want to check it out, go to coyotiv.com, and we are actually starting a new part-time course on Monday, but we have full-time courses, self-paced courses, and I hope it's going to appeal to you as well, what we do at Coyotiv. And until next time, have a nice week. And I hope you stay safe. Please make sure to wear a mask. Don't go out unless you absolutely have to. And stay safe. And I'm going to see you hopefully next week. Bye-bye.